Hello, welcome to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I hope this finds you doing well. I would like to talk with you about this weekend. So this is going up on March 8th. This weekend is carrying us into our Pisces New Moon. I have a video that's really just on the energies of the aspects coming up with the Pisces New Moon. I really want to talk about it a little bit more thematically of what's going on in this cosmic symphony of the archetypes awakening, what they're awakening within us, and how that's part of bigger cycles as well. And this word that I'm going with is really, there's a type of wilderness, there's a wild quality to this weekend, and it's actually, there's different signatures of that wildness, and they function in really particular ways, and it's a healing wild. It's something that we really are being asked to let go of potentially a lot of conditioning, that has come from most likely the combination of personal experience and normative society and histories of colonialism and patriarchy and ableism and all the other complicated, messy, intersecting social paradigms that we're all part of because we grow up within them in different ways, very different ways. And yet we are being asked to come into, on the one hand, literally the new archetypal age of Aquarius, which is an ongoing process and potentially, really opening us to the first tastes of that age of Aquarius as Pluto shifts fully into Aquarius later this year. And we have a Pisces new moon. And the Pisces new moon, Pisces is a type of wilderness. Pisces is an oceanic wilderness. It is water. It is a wilderness of emotions. It is, I'm remembering now that I once wrote an article on the wilderness of grief, because it is the wilderness of grief. That is part of Pisces. And in the same way that when we think of that world, the wilderness has this raw, pulsing beauty to it. And it is sometimes a harsh beauty. It is sometimes a gentle beauty. It is working with different norms than especially our kind of urban or socialized ways of life. And Pisces energy is a wilderness that is beyond everything that we have constructed in order to keep a sense of control, in order to keep certain people in power, in order to keep our own sense of control in this embodied journey. And Pisces has no boundaries. Pisces lets it all go. And so a Pisces new moon is part of this kind of cyclical or spiraling, we could say, journey that humans are part of when we are given an opportunity to go into it, to release, to surrender in a type of a wild abandonment, and really hear the rhythms, however they're emerging to us, of such an incredible spiritual reality. Because Pisces is when the ego dissolves. And when we really let go, when we let go of our sense of control, when we let go of the boundaries that we've built our life within so that we can feel a sense of control in a somewhat experience that we don't have control over ultimately, but we do have co-creative presence with. When we let go and we move with the current and we feel from the inside out this Piscean way of being, we open ourselves to so much healing. This is Nikita. If it's your first time on my channel, Nikita, folks in the comments have fully brought her to co-host status, and I have to agree with that. So that's your co-host status viewing today. And so there can be such healing that comes when we come into this oceanic way of being. And yet, especially if it's kind of like whether we have a lot of Pisces in our chart or whether we don't, it's not easy, because it is a wilderness and it is asking us to really surrender, let the ego dissolve, get out of our own way, go with the flow internally and externally, and see what emerges. And potentially more importantly, Pisces is part of the archetype. Picture being in the depths of the ocean. It's part of seeing in the dark. It's part of seeing with our other senses and our intuition and feeling really from the inside out in a language that is far beyond our spoken words about our soul's calling. And there's other wilderness that we are coming into this weekend. There are wilds of this weekend. And the day before our new moon, which is on the 10th, Mars, who is in Aquarius, squares Uranus. And so that square is still very much present for our new moon. So again, that's Mars that's in Aquarius squaring the planet Uranus, who is in Taurus. And interestingly, Uranus is also sextiling this new moon, the sun and the moon. They're in Pisces. Excuse me. And Mars square Uranus can be a lot of things. And Mars is in Aquarius, which is the sign associated with Uranus. So there is a rhythm unfolding. There is a connection unfolding that ultimately also absolutely wants to be about the radical awakening. So we have on the one hand this radical awakening that is accompanying this deep dissolving of the ego so that we can potentially glimpse a deeper, more authentic awareness of potentially something much, much bigger than us, because this is a Pisces new moon and this is beyond the veil and it is not about us. And yet with this Mars, which is our personal will, in the sign of radical awakening, squaring the radical awakener of the zodiac, there is something to awaken to about our journey, about what we're coming into, about what we're letting go of. And with all the Pisces energy, we are letting go of things. And there's so much opportunity for that awakening and also healing. And yet Mars square Uranus can also be potentially triggering. It can be radical wild card energy, that something we don't see going, which can also be in the don't see coming, which can also be in the collective. And this is where mindfulness and witnessing what's going on within us is so much more important than reacting. When Mars is in a tensional dynamic conversation with a planet like Uranus, or we had it conjunct Pluto not that long ago, we really want to try and witness what's going on first. We may have something to communicate, or we may have an action to take. That absolutely might happen, but we can still take that action or speak something from an empowered place, a place that is not reactionary, a place that is not fueled by raw anger, because raw anger is important and it needs to be honored, and it is usually not the whole story. And this is energy of awakening. And so there wants to be a very mindful, higher mind presence. And yet the feeling can be the wilds. It can be being in this kind of, this is a conversation between air and earth energy with this Mars and Uranus conversation. And if we're not coming into a place of witnessing, then we can have a tension between kind of an idealism for our own very personal life with Mars there in Aquarius and the reality that we're facing. Taurus is our embodied earthly material realm reality. It is also earth consciousness, and it is also deeply rooted wisdom. And so that's again why we want to witness what's happening before we potentially, if we're triggered, okay, if we're just feeling in tune with everything and we're flowing, this totally depends on our chart, then maybe we're just aligned and we are moving and we are awakening and being directed, and we're going through the wilderness of this weekend. And so again, it's just witnessing what's going on with us and witnessing this co-creative, and it is co-creative. When we come into, and co-creation really actually comes from a place of embodied presence. When we come in to true embodiment, which is a lifelong journey, and it's non-linear, and it shifts and it ebbs and flows and it goes deeper and deeper. Yet the co-creative presence that astrology is a beautiful archetypal language for, of us in the universe, divine, God consciousness, collective consciousness, earth consciousness, goddess, it almost dissolves the very question that humans love to open up, which is this somewhat tensional question of free will. Is it destined or is it free will? And when we create a binary with that, binaries are by their very nature a rationality that is disembodied. And so when we come into co-creative presence, when we come into embodiment, the tension dissolves into this beautiful dialectical dance, and the anxiety that drives much of philosophy, Western philosophy, which I studied a heck of a lot of Western philosophy. I think it's beautiful, and yet there is also quite a bit of anxiety that can drive it. That anxiety can dissolve when we come into co-creative presence. And this new moon, which is about asking us to dissolve our ego, sometimes forcing and demanding us to dissolve our ego, that doesn't mean that it's easy, but we feel that dissolving is our choice, even when it feels like we're being forced into it. And when we say that in language, it sounds paradoxical, and yet when we come into an embodiment of a visceral plane of liminality, which is really engaging with the archetypes on a very deep plane, it's incredible. It's incredible. And it's wild, and that energy is here this weekend. And there's one other signature of the wilds that is present, which is that Black Moon Lilith is in Virgo, directly opposite our new moon. And this is such a beautiful presence of wilderness, because she literally is the divine feminine archetype of self-knowledge and knowing her self-worth that is cast into the actual wilderness, metaphorically and literally, by the institution and history of patriarchy. And the fact that archetype is opposite this new moon in Pisces is really asking us to enter the wilderness of these energies so that we can throw out those irrational boundaries that were and still are, but were created by the institutions of power over that do not serve the collective, that do not serve minorities and marginalized identities and bodies and neurodivergent experiences and so many different experiences. Lilith says, this is real. And this, what we were taught is wild, is the rawness of life that is part of being a species of earth and a spiritual being in this human journey. And especially when it comes to acknowledging the divine feminine within ourselves, regardless of gender, comes to seeing how the parts of ourselves that were exiled, marginalized, victimized, that we are never what is done to us. Never what is done to us. And one of the complicated lessons of modern trauma work is that oftentimes there is an elision of the things that we survive and the relationship with ourself that is impacted by what we survive. And if we survive violence, we survive violence, whether that's emotional or psychological, physical or intergenerational. And the trauma emerges in our relationship with ourself. And that is separate, related, but separate, and we are not what we survive. And Lilith says, if there was shame put onto me, it gets dissolved as I enter into this union with the divine. And in that dissolving of self, I re-establish a relationship with these very mystical roots of this human experience, which go far beyond the human experience and into soul. And as I re-emerge from that, I come almost as if cleansed of that shame, and I just take up my rightful self-worth. And Black Moon Lilith is there in Virgo, a sign of service, a sign of the mind-body connection, a sign that knows how to bring the Piscean wilderness into this plane in a way that we can interact with it in a way that supports our mental and emotional and physical wellness, and also the Earth's wellness. And she's there. She's with us this weekend. And so if you are feeling a lot of energy, or also the opposite, if you're feeling completely depleted, and a Pisces new moon can deplete us, and we also have Saturn and Neptune sandwiching this new moon. So there is so much in Pisces. And then after, the moon is going to go and it's going to conjunct Neptune quite quickly. And then around a week later, the sun is going to be conjunct Neptune, right? So there's a lot of Piscean, Neptunian vibes this weekend. And so you might feel depleted as well. Again, it's about shifting and trying to go with the flow, and also just cultivating, regardless of where we find ourselves or what mood we're in, cultivating that co-creative presence and simply being what is, and not resisting. But doing that from a wakeful presence with that Mars squaring that Uranus, which could also blast doors open for us and where we're heading, okay? In this non-linear journey, which is cycling in to the bigger cycles that we're part of in this life, and also our soul's journey, which from the evolutionary astrology perspective is always what this very personal drama is about, a much bigger story that our soul is on. And for that, you can have evolutionary astrology reading, because it's beautiful to jump into all those archetypes in the natal chart. And I'm going to stop there. So I am sending really, really heartfelt blessings for just moving through these wilds of this weekend. And I will see you on the flip side. Take care.